What's happening, bonsai friends? It's Darren here. Good to see you back. I am super excited for this video because it's finally time to do some repotting. Here's the tree that we're going to be working on today. I've got a few different pots to choose from, so we'll have some fun on pot selection. So as you can see, we're hitting this repot just maybe a little bit late actually, but I think we'll be alright with the proper aftercare. Oh, it's one of my favourite trees, this is. To take it out of the container, I'm not going to pull the tree at all. I'm going to support the tree, but I'm going to try and tease it out by manipulating the pot. I start wobbling the tree all around. If I start wobbling the tree, I don't want to disturb any roots that may form. There we go. And some species do really well and produce a dense disc of fine fibrous roots in these pond baskets. So I'll be interested to see how the Berberis has got on. But first I'm going to tease back some of this soil from the surface. The great thing about this species is they have a yellow vascular system. So can you see these roots we've got formed in here? I'm hoping that they've formed from a gap that's in the nebari. So let's just very carefully just tease back some more of this sphagnum. Really, I shouldn't disturb them, but I'm just curious to see if it was a success. That's the good thing about the chopstick, it's very friendly on roots. Really, I should just leave it alone, but I'm just so eager to see what's happened down here. I'm just impatient. There are some thicker structural roots here somewhere. So while we're looking at these finer pieces, I do know I can go a bit further. With all these adventitious roots here, I don't need to be too precious. Now I just need to find where the true base is. If there was one or two new roots, and I was desperate for more roots in the nebari, then I'd be a bit more careful, but actually, we're looking damn good up here. I can be a bit more forceful searching for that base. I think we've exposed the best of it. Yeah, this is the thick structural root that I seem to remember. And I can tell you that we have absolutely been successful in generating some new roots to fill in the hole. Yeah, there's a gap. Let's see if I can show you. There's a structural piece down here. There's a structural piece here, and there's a gap. There was a gap in here, and I packed it with sphagnum, and I pierced the bark a little and put some rooting hormone gel on there to try and stimulate new roots. And we've definitely achieved our goal, and some. Look at that! I'm delighted. There we go, there's a bit of sphagnum moss there. Look at that, brilliant. So if we just have a look around, look at that, we've got the beginnings of a really good nebari in here. Whoa, super chuffed about that. Absolutely fantastic. Sorry for interrupting, but my daughter's just got home and she's given me this poster to celebrate the channel getting to the 3,000 subscriber mark. Check it out. Bless her. I'm just so grateful that there are 3,000 people out there in the world willing to watch me play with my trees. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. It would make my day. Oh, and also smash that thumbs up button. It really helps the channel out. Thank you so much. I think that somewhere in there makes a good front. I don't know how well you can see. Something like that. makes the best use at the moment of the base that we've got. We've got a nice thick piece here, it flares down nicely, we've got some good movement through that trunk. So I like the way that we take in some of the, for taking that nice piece of nebari. We've got some nice angular movement. The apex of the tree is coming towards us, so I think that would work quite well. With this scraper, I'm just going to carefully try and establish a flat base. Okay, so using that tool looks a bit brutal, but it's simply a super efficient way to establish the angle at the base of the root pad. And this is what I've chosen. It takes in this lovely root there, a bit of the thickening that goes on at the base here. We're off vertical, got a nice bit of movement, and the apex is coming towards the viewer. So we've got a nice flattish base now. I can simply use my chopstick to continue to remove soil equally from all areas of the bottom of this pad to keep that established angle consistent. And downward facing roots from the centre of the trunk, and a prune back. If I'm not 100% sure where the root's coming from, such as this piece, I'll leave that for the time being and see if I can figure out where it's coming from. Cut away any of those thicker pieces that we've revealed. In terms of the height of the root ball, we've got all these lovely dense fine feeder roots up at the top near the base of the tree, so we can really go right down with the height. With the chopstick that I've got here, I'm just very gently, firmly enough to get the job done, but gently enough not to rip every single root off the trunk. I'm just, with a fairly loose wrist and a fairly loose grip, teasing the chopstick through the soil, teasing the roots out. I'll come in here, cut back some of these downward growing thicker pieces. And that's the luxury of using these pond baskets, is we know that we can be actually safely determined with our root pruning, because for a start the tree is really healthy, and secondly we've just got so much fine feeder root, it's almost all fine feeder root. We can really chase it back to the bare essentials that we need and still end up with a nice bonsaiable root system ready to go into our container. And with the amount of work that we've done so far, I'm still not even remotely worried for the health of the tree. Still completely happy that this is going to go away and thrive. I'm not even in the slightest bit concerned so far. We could take off a lot more if we really needed to. Not that I will if I don't need to. But if we really wanted to, we could go much further than this. Angle wise, I think we're still looking really good. I'm really happy with the angle and the depth of the root ball. So now that we've done all the work we need to at the base, I'm going to come in from the top and free up some of these roots, get some of this mucky soil out the way. Once we've got some of this muckier soil out the way, we'll do a final root pruning, then we'll look at pots. unlike the potentillas that I've been working on recently from these pond baskets, the Berberis didn't establish its root system as deeply or as thoroughly as they did. Obviously they're a lot more vigorous, and this is the dwarf variety, so it's a little slower growing, so I suppose it's not really surprising. So I think where we've managed to stimulate some adventitious roots, there are some on top of some nice structural pieces. So with this tree being nice and healthy, I'm going to go outside and wash the roots off, and let's see if we need to prune any of these adventitious fine roots that we've got forming. So I'll go outside and wash it off, and then we'll come back and have a better look. Ooh, look at that. So I've washed the roots off. Oh, look how well that's coming on. It's coming on beautifully. So I'm going to prune this guy out because it's coming from the same spot as two useful structural roots are. Come in, get that out of the way. So these two roots here are coming off at awkward angles, and there's a piece attached down there from that piece, and there's another piece coming off this way, so they're both in better positions, so get rid of that one. Just here we've got a couple of roots crossing. In this scenario I'm going to cut this upper piece off. I'm not going to rip this out for fear of damaging roots further down, but let's see if we can't just tease it into a good position. There we go. I'm happy to leave these little roots that are coming from this hollow area. Hopefully they'll go on to develop nicely. So this root coming down and off to the side, it's not at the greatest angle, but I'm happy to leave that guy to rock out. Here we've got a couple of thickish roots coming from right underneath. I think they're coming from below the area that we would call our base. So I'm going to actually cut these both, and cut those both back quite hard so they can still function, but they're going to stimulate more growth further back having pruned it. Then here we've got a nice thick piece coming off this section. So this one above it we don't need. Dividing off this, we've got one here and we've got one here. We don't need those. We'd like this to come down in this direction really. So I'm going to cut that right back and cut this one here. That was a good decision. Goodness knows where that's going. Rather than ripping it, I'm just going to cut it back nice and flush. And again, we've got this piece here, and above it we've got a finer piece that we won't keep. This piece is coming off at all sorts of angles. Let's get rid of you. We've got a nice bit above it. Okay, so in terms of nebari work, I'm happy with that actually. I think that's I'm happy with that at this iteration, and I'm happy to continue to let everything else develop. So now that I've washed the roots, I think we have lost the preferred potting angle a little bit. Let's have a look. Okay, yeah, we have lost it a little bit. Let's just come under here and have a look what's going on. Oh, I see. Right, so we've got a bundle of, well, not massively thick, but got a bundle of more structural roots here. It's giving us a bit of a hard time. It's not necessarily our aim to create a super flat base like we would, I don't know, a maple or something, but the flatter we can get it now, the better really. The more we cut back these roots that we don't need, the stronger the roots that we do want to keep will become, and that'll improve our nebari. I've got a few potential pots to look at. I picked up a round, but I probably won't go for the round. But we'll look anyway. Got a nice rectangle and almost like a Moco oval kind of shape. Just for argument's sake, let's look at the tree using this as the front, just to give you an idea how that's going to feel. It's quite small, but I think we'll be able to get it in there okay. In terms of the colour, it's quite harmonious, that colour. It makes it hard with the bright yellow roots, which we won't see once it's potted up. It makes it hard to decide, but the foliage is this purpley reddish colour. You know, I don't hate that. I kind of like it. So the next one is the rectangle here. I quite like this, I must admit. I do quite like this. I like the fact that the angular shape works well with the angular movement in the tree. We've got a flash of colour which complements the foliage. The blue-green is going to contrast nicely with the foliage and the yellow flowers. I do wonder if yellow flowers, purple leaves, purple and blue pot might be a lot of different colours going on in the composition. Size-wise, that's a really good fit. We'd have to do the least amount of pruning to get it in there. I think that would work quite well. And finally, I think this would be the tightest fit. We've got this round one. I mean, I don't hate it. You know, I do quite like that actually. Do you think the lip of the pot softens the angular movement of the tree, or do you reckon it is too contrasting? You know, we've got an angular tree and then a very feminine pot. Do you think the contrast works or doesn't work? Let me know what you think. So I don't know. I asked a while ago on Instagram on my story to see what people thought comparing these two, and it's pretty mixed actually. No, this one's not doing anything for me. It kind of works, don't get me wrong, but I think this is quite a colourful tree. I think using a pot that's very analogous in colours, it just tones down that colourfulness too much, I think. I like this, but I do have, bear with me, I do have this one, which is exactly the same size and shape as that blue one, but we've got more green, yellowy colour through the glaze of this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. I know it's humble and it's got its faults, but I really love this tree. So yeah, I dug this one out. Cool, not sure. And then I just tried this one, and you have to kind of try and imagine it without the yellow roots. Try and cover up the roots a little so that I'm going for this one. Okay, that's nice and snug. Get the mesh in place. Beautiful. So it is going to be necessary to prune these roots enough that we can get it into the container. So I'm just going to come along the profile. I'm not concerned in the slightest with how much is being removed because we've got a beautiful dense root system. Simply going to give plenty of room for new roots to develop without being butted up to the side of the container. As you can hopefully see, even with all the material, or even with all the roots that we've removed, we've still got a beautiful root system, courtesy of that pond basket. Oh, beautiful. Okay, let's sort some tie down wire. Because of the fine roots that we've got, I've got nothing really structural to tie off to, so I'm going to have to do a little something with some bamboo. In order to facilitate that, I'm going to need 4 pieces of wire, which it's going to seem excessive for a shohin. Well, I mean, at least we'll be able to say many things about this tree, but we won't be able to say that it's not tied in securely. The things I do. Some nice right angle corners in these tie downs. Okay, I'm going to go through one at a time to make sure we don't get any crossing in these wires. Don't want them crossed over, that'll jeopardise the success. Get these out of the way a little bit. I don't need to be too worried because we've got a nice compact root ball to work with. And then for an aeration layer, 1 or I don't know, maybe 2 particles deep for this aeration layer, because although it's a shallow container, I'm going to mound it a little bit, give the roots plenty of space, so I don't mind that aeration layer just a little bit deeper. Then we'll come in with the tume sized or the shohin grade akadama. One, maybe 2 particles deep on top of the aeration layer, and I'm going to form a fairly large mound in the middle, relatively speaking. This is the front of the container. The front of the tree, we've got that major root to the left, slightly offset so it's not 2D. We'll also try and find a position where the main trunk line is also slightly offset to the left. I'm going to settle it down into that mound till it starts to feel quite stable. Checking that we're central in the pot. Just that major structural root slightly offset to the slightly offset from straight, and then the main trunk line is also coming towards the viewer slightly. Okay, so to tie this tree in, I'm going to run a couple of trimmed down bamboo canes across these roots and tie them down with the wires. I don't want to tie directly to any of these roots with the wires because they're just so fine at the moment. So that's the strategy I'm going to use. Before I do that, I am going to introduce a bit of my akadama around the roots here. Just get that wire out of the way. I'm going to carefully weave a little bit of soil in amongst these roots This isn't like a full finished chopsticking. I'm just trying to get a bit of soil in amongst those, in amongst some of these finer roots, so that when I come to tie down using the bamboo and the wires, the bamboo is being tied to the fine roots that have a bit of support from the soil, rather than tying it directly to the roots and squashing them all. Okay, a little tap just to help it settle. Any small pieces, again, just very carefully working a bit of soil in. And we'll finish the chopsticking. We'll finish the chopsticking properly in a moment. Just here we've come a bit high with the soil. Tease some soil underneath there into any spaces. Again, this isn't the full chopsticking, just trying to provide a bit of support. Is that a root? No. Just trying to provide a bit of support for the roots when we do come to tie them in. Holding the tree firm so that it's not rising and rising. Okay, here comes the faffy bit. Trying to hold the tree in place nicely. I need to just tease the wires back out. And we'll just get that provisionally held in place at that end. Tease the wires out here. Provisionally held in place there. Get these wires trimmed back to a length that's easier to work with. Go one more turn with the fingers. There we go. And I'm not going to over crank this. Just going to tighten it down snug. Same this end. Not over cranking it, just enough to snug it down. Oops, knocked a leaf off. Okay, so with those in place, let's just trim. Keep this root in position, stop it popping back up. Just going to use a little hook like so. There we go. Okay, so now the tree is secure, let's come in and just make sure that we've got a nice amount of soil underneath the chopstick and in amongst the roots. very delicate work this, and coming in with the chopstick, feeling for hollow spaces, especially underneath the tie downs. If I can feel any hollow spots, just very gently pushing soil down, knitting it in with the roots and tucking it under. And it's especially important to be thorough, for me to be thorough doing this chopsticking, because there are a lot of air spaces between those roots where we bare rooted. Okay, so now I've been around the perimeter, but there's just a couple of hollows up the top. I'm just going to work a bit of soil amongst these finer roots. Don't need to go too crazy. The top dressing that I'll use will take care of these, but I do want to make sure that there's no holes. I remember there being a bit of a hollow behind there, so just want to knit a bit of soil in there. Use my brush to re-establish the lip of the container, which is going to catch the water when we water, so it flows into the pot instead of over the edges. Final step is to apply a bit of moss top dressing. That's going to provide just a little bit of extra space for the roots to colonise. Reduce the, there's a hair, dog hair there, don't want that. It also acts to even out the column of, it acts to even out the distribution of water through the pot, so it's not pooled at the bottom, and any of those fine roots that are slightly exposed will be protected. Back a little bit of moss into that hollowish area where the fine roots are forming. That's going to keep them nice and happy, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to go outside and get this guy watered in, and then we'll have a good look at it. Back in a sec. So there she is, all watered in. I hope you like it. I am absolutely delighted, really pleased with the pot choice, and I think the angle change has worked out nicely. I wasn't dead chuffed about the way I had to tie it in, because the roots were bare and there were no strong structural roots to utilise to tie the tree into the pot. I felt that maybe there might be a technique that I'm missing. We could do that a little bit better. So if you know of anything, write down below. I'd love to hear it. Always looking to learn new techniques, so that would be absolutely awesome. With it still being February, we are prone to frosts right up until even May. So I will keep this one in the greenhouse, protected from any of the worst weather. Once it's recovered a little, I'll come in again and I'll probably reposition some of these branches. When I wired it over the winter, I had assumed a slightly different angle, so I'll look to place those a little better, but on the whole I'm pretty chuffed with that. And if you haven't subscribed already, I would be delighted if you subscribed right now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.